Hi everybody, my name is Mr. Francy and welcome back to Mr. Francy Reads. Today we are continuing on with my favourites and non-favourites for the year. Now, originally today's video was going to be my favourite books, the best books of 2022. But, you guys, let's discuss. I was going through my list of my favourite books for 2022, and all I could think was, well, two things. One, yes, they are my favourites of 2022, but two, I have mentioned these books to death. I've mentioned them so many times that I decided to scrap that idea, but still continue with the theme, and instead today I am going to tell you my top 10 favourite books of all time. So these are any books that I've ever read that hold a very special place in my heart. All of these books not only received 5 stars from me when I did read them, but they're all books that are very special to me for a certain reason. And also, it's safe to say, I would recommend every single one of these books. Now, one of them comes with trigger warnings, but don't worry, I will discuss all that when we get to it. So the only thing left is to get right into it, shall we? So, here we go. Merry Christmas, and welcome to my top 10 books of all time. Now, there is no particular ranking order for these books because I love them all equally. We'll just begin with the first one. And the first book that I'm going to be discussing with you in this video is this book, Date Me, Bryson Keller by Kevin Van Wy. Let's put it up on the screen. So this is a YA LGBTIQ+ male-male romance that I love so much. It has a very, very, very special place in my heart because it deals with I want to say a trope in romance that I don't like, but honestly, in my opinion, and my channel, so I can have my opinion, it is a cliche in romance that I don't like. So, let's discuss the plot, then I'll raise my hand and say a spoiler that will tell you what that cliche is that I don't like that's not in this one. So, in this book, we follow our protagonist, whose name has I've lost his name. I'm sorry, I read it a while ago. But we follow our protagonist, who is a high schooler, and the day before, or 2 days before they are due to return back to high school, they are having a high school party. Now, at this high school party, the most popular jock of that year, who plays on the school sporting team of something, anyway, his name is Bryson Keller. And Bryson Keller is at this party, and he is dared by one of his jock buddies to date anyone and everyone who asks him. Bryson Keller accepts the dare. Then, one day, our protagonist, who just so happens to be gay, is with Bryson doing something. I don't know if it was a detention or something they had to do for school, but they're at school together doing something together. And for a laugh, our protagonist says, well, you know, you're dared to date everyone, so, haha, date me, Bryson Keller. And Bryson Keller turns around and says, okay, why not? So they end up going on a date and having a fabulous time. Now, there is more to the story, but I'm going to mention that spoiler now, so I'm going to raise my hand. When I lower my hand, the spoiler will be over. All right? Spoiler time. If you don't want to see it, skip ahead 10 seconds. Here we go. Okay, so I'm referring to the breakup trope. I really don't like the breakup tropes in romances. It's been done to death. That's why I think it's a cliche. I understand there needs to be drama or some sort of a conflict that occurs in a romance to make it interesting, but why not have this drama or conflict involve both the couples still together, fighting together to get through something rather than to break up? In this particular book, the protagonist and Bryson Keller don't break up at all throughout the entire book. They remain together the whole time. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop and it just never did. And that is one of the many reasons why I love this book. Kevin Van Wy has a new release that has come out called Nate Plus One, and I cannot wait to read it next year. Alright, next book. So the next book that holds a special place in my heart does so because of how much I love this person. It is a memoir called Home, a memoir of my early years, and it is by Julie Andrews. Let's put it up on the screen. Okay, now this book holds a very special place in my heart because Dame Julie Andrews holds a very special place in my heart. Everyone has that special person, whether it is a celebrity or a non-celebrity, where the day they die is going to be a dark day. Don't contact them, leave them alone. For me, it is this woman. The day Julie Andrews leaves this world, don't contact me, don't talk to me. I'll be under the covers crying, watching every single Julie Andrews film. Now, when I found out that Julie Andrews had released some memoirs, this got me really excited. What got me even more excited was that on audiobook, she actually narrates this audiobook. So it was like, just a gift from above, really. So I listened to the audiobook and had a blast with it. I highly recommend it. However, I also recommend you have a coffee on you or some sort of a soda on you, because Julie Andrews has this beautiful voice that you can easily fall asleep to because of how calming it is. So either speed up the audio narration or have some coffee while you're listening, but it was a beautiful read for me. I truly enjoyed it and highly recommend it. The next book that I recommend is this book, Talking as Fast as I Can by Lauren Graham. Let's put it up on the screen. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Lauren Graham is well known for many different things, but arguably the thing she is most known for is being one of the main characters in the hit TV show Gilmore Girls. I have a massive backstory as to my experience with Gilmore Girls, and if you'd like to know more, comment below and let me know. I might do a video, or come on over to the Discord and ask me over there. It will take up too much time to explain here, but suffice to say, I love the show so much. And whilst I did love and grew to appreciate the characters of Rory, an unpopular opinion being that I love Emily, another unpopular opinion that I love Dean. A lot of people don't love Dean, but I absolutely love Dean. I latched on to the character of Lorelai from the very first episode all the way through to the last one. Now, I don't like the films, but I love the show. So when I found out that Lorelai, that is Lauren Graham, had released a memoir talking about her life, I was very excited to read it. When I found out that Lauren Graham was actually going to be narrating it herself, I got even more excited. I read this book. It was so fantastic. Now, Lauren Graham has recently released another memoir called Have I Told You This Already? And she narrated that one too. I'm going to read that next year, and I'm really excited about that. So Gilmore Girls fans, you're in for a treat with this one. I highly recommend. The next book that I highly recommend is this book, Divergent by Veronica Roth. Let's put this edition up on the screen. Okay, this is a YA dystopian, and let me tell you, this is my hook to get anyone interested in reading this particular book. How many of you out there love the Harry Potter series? I'm going to say nothing of J.K. Rowling, just the Harry Potter series itself. Now, how many of you love the creative, inventive idea that J.K. Rowling came up with the house system at Hogwarts? Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. There is so much history and so much culture between all of the different houses. How would you like to see something like that take place in an entire city or state? Well, in Divergent, you have exactly that. There are, I think, 6 or 7 different cultured districts throughout the world that we're in this dystopian book, and I love it so, so, so much. We range from a culture called abnegation, which is a very selfless culture, to a culture called, I believe it's called erudite for all the intelligent people, to a culture called candor, which is all about logic and reasoning and justice, which is my personal favorite, by the way, to a culture called dauntless, which is all about being fearless. And it is just the world building in this first book, in this Divergent series, is so fantastic. Fans of the Harry Potter Hogwarts houses, if you have not read the book, I highly, highly recommend it. You're going to love the world building. The next book that I recommend is this book, A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. Let's put it up on the screen. Okay, so this is an adult non-fiction self-help book. Now, what's that you say, Mr. Francy? You read a self-help book? Yes, I did, but It's interesting. I didn't seek out this book for assistance on returning to a place of love. In fact, I read Michelle Visage's memoir, The Diva Rules, and Michelle brought this book up in her memoir, and I thought that it sounded interesting, so I thought I would give it a go. Now, some people believe that money makes the world go round. I truly believe that it is love that makes the world go around. And I'm not talking about like love with two people that get into a relationship. I'm talking about just pure, genuine love that we all show or should show one another. And Marianne Williamson in this book does everything she can to assist everyone to show even more love, or at the very least, return to a place of love. And I just thought it was absolutely wonderful. If you feel that you could do with more love in your life, showing and receiving, or if you feel that you know someone who could do with more love in their life, showing or receiving, I highly recommend you recommend this book to them, or you read it yourself, because it's just fantastic. I did not go into this book planning on taking anything on board at all. I just wanted to read it to see what Marianne Williamson wrote. But I ended up finishing the book and giving it an overwhelming 5 stars because it was just so fantastic. I completely agreed with everything that Marianne Williamson said, so I highly recommend it. The next book that I recommend is a book that holds a very special place in my heart, but some people choose not to pick up this book because this is the triggering one that I was discussing with you earlier. So there are triggers in this book. We will discuss that in a minute. Let's show the book. It is called A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Okay, let's put this edition up on the screen. Okay. So this, I don't even remember what the genre of this is, but anyway, I'm going to call this an YA or adult. I mean, it feels like YA with characters, but then it feels like adult with the writing style. So let's call it adult. An adult triggering book. I'm just going to call it that. So I was watching Michelle from booktube channel Books Michelle talk about this book and how a lot of people who have read it have cried reading it. She did a reading vlog just dedicated to this one book alone, and she didn't cry until she got all the way to the end. I don't cry with a lot of books that I read. I maybe cry with 1% of the books I read. So I thought, hey, I'll take on the challenge. I could do with a good book that makes me cry. And so I decided to read it. Now, in this book, we follow a number of different characters, but I latched on to arguably, well, anyway, what I refer to as the main character, who is Jude. Jude has had a horrible, and I mean horrible, backstory with his life up to the point where we first meet him. And we continue to learn more and more about him as we do go along. I felt incredibly invested in him from the moment I met him, and that investment continued all the way through the book. Now, I did not cry for the longest time, and when I got 4 chapters away from being done with this entire book, I hadn't cried, but I was very, very angry because of some things that were going on in the book, and I wasn't happy with Hanya Yanagihara because of things that she had chosen to do. But when I got to, I think it was either the last page of the second last chapter or the first page of the last chapter, I bawled my eyes out more than I ever have before. Like, it wasn't crying or sobbing. I was wailing reading that. Oh my goodness. It is extremely triggering. I'm not going to reveal the triggers here because it will be spoilers for those who don't want to know. But if you do want to know, just look it up. Look up what the trigger warnings are for A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. If you are okay with books that make you cry, check into the trigger warnings. If you're okay with those trigger warnings and think you can deal with them, I highly recommend it. This is a book that has stayed with me ever since I read it. That's how profound it was to me. So I highly recommend if you can read it. If you don't feel you can because of the trigger warnings, I completely understand because it is very, very raw and very, very real. So I get that. But if you can read it, trust me, it's a long book. It's 700 pages, but it is worth the read. Okay. Next book I'm going to recommend is this book, Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer. Let's put it up on the screen. So this is a YA hard-hitting contemporary, and I fell in love with Bridget Kemmerer after reading this book. I ended up going on, I'll tell you about the book in just a minute, but I ended up going on to read The Companion, More Than We Can Tell, and loved that. And in 2023, I hope to read another one of her contemporaries, Call It What You Want. I did read her first book in a fantasy series that she started, and I did not like that. So while I love Bridget Kemmerer, I love her hard-hitting contemporaries, I'm not a fan of her fantasies. In this particular book, which is the first book that I ever read by her, we follow two characters, Juliet and Declan. Juliet's mother has passed away, and Juliet has decided to write letters to her mother. Every time she goes to her gravesite, she'll leave the letter there. Declan, meanwhile, so dual perspective, we follow both characters in alternating chapters, we follow their perspectives. Declan, meanwhile, has gotten into trouble. We learn more about why he got into trouble as the story progresses, so I don't want to give that away. But he got into trouble with the law and is now doing community service. His community service includes mowing the lawn around the grave sites. And so before he can mow around anywhere, he needs to remove all of the contents from that site, put it to the side, then mow, and then put it back. And when he comes across Juliet's mother's grave site, he sees the letters and can't help himself. He reads one of them and learns a little more about Juliet, what she's been through, what she's going through, and feels really sorry for her. Now, in real life, these two actually know each other at school, and they don't like each other, but what ends up happening is that one day one of them writes a message and leaves it on the science class table. The other one comes in and has the same table, so they add to the message, and they end up writing anonymous letters back and forth. The point of the book is not who is writing these anonymous letters, although that reveal does occur at some point, but the point is the hard-hitting contemporary moments. I read this book in 2020 and it has stuck with me all this time. No wonder it has a special place in my heart. I highly recommend reading Bridget Kemmerer if you are looking for some amazing hard-hitting contemporaries. Alright, for the next book that I plan to recommend, if you do not want to hear me say anything at all about the Harry Potter series, skip ahead to the next book. The reason I'm giving you this heads up is because I know some people feel offended when I discuss a Harry Potter book. For me personally, I separate the author from the series. I love the Harry Potter series so much that I can easily just shove aside J.K. Rowling and appreciate the series for what it is. But if you can't do that, skip ahead to the next one. If you can do that, let's discuss why I have to have this book on this list. The specific Harry Potter book, I love the whole series, but the specific one I'm showing you is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Let's put this edition up on the screen. Okay, the reason I chose this book is because in 2020, I decided to do a reread of the Harry Potter series, and I really enjoyed it. But when I got to this particular book, I went in, well, not kicking and screaming, but I went in going, yeah, I know I'm not going to enjoy this book, but it's okay, I'll just get through it. I read the book and loved it so much. Now, I had read the series many, many times growing up. I had read whatever book it was to whatever film adaptation several times before each film adaptation had come out. So I know the series very, very well. But what ruined this book for me and what had me going back, and this is book number 4 in the series, so I would go back and read the first 3 and just keep reading them and skip over book number 4, was the movie adaptation. And that is, I mean, if you want to see ranting, I can rant about that film. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the film adaptation, was an absolute unequivocal disaster. And that was thanks to the really just horrible direction of Mike Newell. Okay, I'm going to tell you exactly why I know this is the case. In a DVD special, whatever you call it, the bonus material that you get outside of the film in the DVDs, Mike Newell, the director, is doing an interview, and he's asked the question if he read the book. And his answer is, did I read the book? Have you seen that thing? It's a brick. Why would I read it? Are you kidding me? He didn't even read the source material, but it explains so much. The only thing that I actually like about the 4th film is the fact that Daniel Radcliffe, who plays the protagonist Harry Potter, has longer hair. And if that is the only thing that I like about a film, that shows just how horrible the film is. As an adaptation, it falls incredibly short. I don't want to give away spoilers, but there is a maze that is entered into towards the end of the film. The maze is just so incredible. The imagination of the author when it came to this particular maze was just off the charts. In the film, it couldn't have been any more boring. It was like one idea that they had, and the idea was boring. Where in the book, there's like 20, 30 different things that go on in the maze. Also, I'll limit it to 2 things, but there are many things I could complain about. But to keep it to the book, I loved the maze in the book. Also, there is a competition that's going on, an inter-school, school district competition going on, where 2 other schools come to Hogwarts, and they are Beauxbatons and Durmstrang. Now, these 2 schools will compete against Hogwarts, and the winning representative of the school will not only win for themselves, but they'll win the title for their school, on behalf of their school. Both Durmstrang and Beauxbatons are co-ed boy-girl schools. In the films, they decided to make Beauxbatons an all-girls school and Durmstrang an all-boys school. I do not understand this for the life of me, and in fact, I was really looking forward to seeing the boys of Beauxbatons and the girls of Durmstrang, and so to not see what I wanted to see, to get the opposite of that, really let me down. But when I reread this book in January, not January, but in 2020, for the first time in such a long time, I just remember hugging the book and apologizing to the inanimate object that is the book and saying, I'm so sorry I didn't read you because of the film, because the book is amazing. So if you've watched Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire film, do not do what I did. Do not take it out on the book. The book is fantastic. The film sucks. Give the film a miss. If you're going to have a director who didn't even read the source material, it explains so much. Read the book, give the film a miss, but the book is amazing. Alright, so we have 2 books left. The next book that I'm going to recommend, okay, I need to quickly give you a bit of history here. In January of 2020, it was a really warm summer's day, and I found myself falling down a very deep, dark rabbit hole, searching up things to do with, funny enough, after that last book that I showed you, the Harry Potter series. I came across a lot of videos talking about the Harry Potter movies that I really enjoyed, so I fell down the rabbit hole and kept on going. Then I came across a video from a YouTube channel called Murphy Napier. And Murphy was discussing the Harry Potter books, which really intrigued me because everyone else was talking about the films, she's talking about the books. And so I enjoyed her video so much that I went back and watched some of her other videos and then realized, oh my gosh, every single one of her videos is about books. You can do this on YouTube. Yes, my friends, in early January of 2020 and prior to that, I didn't know booktube was even a thing. But let me tell you, not even a week later, thanks to Murphy Napier from booktuber channel Murphy Napier, I started my own channel and I've nearly been here for, has it been 3 years? I think it's been 3. Yes, I've nearly been here for 3 years. Thank you, Murphy. Now, in one of Murphy's videos, she was talking about a book that she recommends to everyone, and she was saying, and I'll never forget this, there are times where I say, I think you might enjoy this, so maybe give it a go. But with this book, everyone just has to read this book. Okay, you all just have to. You have to. And I never say that, but you have to. So I read the book, and I'm going to say the same to you all. This book was life-changing for me, and that is this book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. Let's put it up on the screen, because even holding up the book changes the lighting, which is weird. Okay, this is I think I would call it a middle grade psychological fiction. Now, Charlie Mackesy has a foreword in this book where he's saying that he's not much of an author. He much prefers to draw pictures. So there aren't a lot of words in this book. And the audio book goes for 1 hour on 1x speed. So it's a really quick book. But here's something I will say. Every single sentence in this book is incredibly profound and thoughtful and thought-provoking. To give you an example that I'm not going to directly quote, but I'll just roughly surmise for you. One of the quotes is, okay, so quick premise. We have a boy who is walking in nature. He comes across a mole, a fox, and a horse, hence the title. And they're all sitting around having conversations, and everything that they discuss is extremely profound. But one of the things that is discussed is one of the animals says to the boy, "Do you see the glass as being half full or half empty?" Now, I'm definitely someone who sees a glass as being half full. I'm very positive. The boy turns around and says to the animal, "Well, actually, I'm just thankful to have the glass." Are you kidding me? And that's just one line in this book. Every single line is so incredibly thought-provoking. I read this book, I was at my mother's house when I was listening to the audio narration of it. As I said, it only goes for an hour on 1x speed. And it was very early in the morning. I actually woke my mother up after reading this book in tears and said to her, "Mum, you have to read this book, it's so amazing." If you read any book at the end of this year or throughout 2023, please do yourself the favor and make sure it is this one. Whether you purchase the hardback cover so that Charlie Maxey can get the royalties for it, or whether you just listen to it on Audible and say it's only a 1-hour book on 1x speed, trust me, you will not regret it. I know now why Murphy was so certain in saying everyone has to read this book, because you won't regret it. There is no way you will. It is so well done for a man who self-proclaims he is not an author and he says few words. Those words are extremely impactful and extremely thought-provoking. I cannot highly recommend it. Okay, on to the final book that I recommend for you all, and this book. All of these books hold a very special place in my heart. All of them got an overwhelming 5 stars. Let's quickly go through a star rating, shall we? 1 star, 2 star, 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars, and then for me, above 5 stars sits the overwhelming 5 stars. All of these books got an overwhelming 5 stars from me. But if somehow I was in a horrifying nightmare where someone was forcing me to burn every single book that I own, touch wood that never happens, because you all know how much I love my books, I would find a way to place this book into a secret compartment so that it did not get destroyed because of just how much love I have for it. I remember saying to my mother when I ordered the specific edition of this book that I did, that I need to buy a vault so I can put it in the vault because I don't want anyone stealing it. And even she was saying maybe you should get one of those like cheese dome glass topper things to place over the book because it's that precious to you. Yeah, it may sound funny, but I kind of actually agreed with that idea. So what book am I talking about? What is the single most precious book to me in my entire bookshelf that no one will ever not only borrow but lay a paw on except for me? Okay, it is Mistborn: The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. How much time do you have? Okay, so I read this book in, I think it was late February of 2020, and this book and Brandon Sanderson, this is the first Brandon Sanderson book I ever read, changed the way I view fantasy forever. I had read many different fantasy series that were successful fantasy series, very well known, like Harry Potter and many others, and that I loved. Then I read this thing. Okay, let's put it up on the screen because the glare is not doing it justice. Okay. Now, this edition is the Tor Publishing TOR. You cannot get this in Australia, which is another part of the reason it's so precious to me, because if something happened, it's not like I can just go to the store here in Australia and purchase another edition. I had to get this specifically delivered to me from America. So if you're in America, you might be able to get a copy a lot more easily than I did. But anyway, okay. In this book, we follow an orphan whose name is Vin. Vin and her brother's parents have both died, and they ended up becoming a part of an all-male, except for her, thieving crew, and the rest of the crew treat her absolutely horribly. One day, my, oh my gosh, fictional boyfriend of all time, because, I mean, they're fictional, so you can claim them as yours, right? I certainly did. Kelsier, or if you prefer the American pronunciation, Kelsier, comes along and rescues Vin and makes her a part of his crew, and while that is also male dominant, all of the men on that crew treat Vin very well. They are very appreciative of having her there. While Vin is there, she realizes that she has magical abilities, and Kelsia introduces her to all of her magical abilities. It is just a phenomenal read, and I really appreciate it. The world building that Brandon Sanderson has in this first book in the Mistborn series, it's a fantasy dystopian in that we're in a dystopian world, but there's magic systems that occur, and the dystopian world was just phenomenally built. Everything was so purposefully written, and I appreciate that. Even when you get to book 3, which is the final book in the first era of Mistborn, there are moments where I read that third book, The Hero of Ages, and I go, oh, now I understand why he did this in the first book. he plans ahead so well. But the magic systems, Brandon Sanderson writes hard magic systems. What that means is they are fully fleshed out magic systems where you know everything about them. I highly recommend this book. It is fantastic. We have gone way over time. I could talk so much more about this book, but that particular one holds a very special place in my heart, to the point that no one else is allowed to touch it except for me. All right, everyone, let's do everyone's favorite game that we like to call Up. These are all of the books that I recommend to you all as my favorite books of all time. What are some of your favorite books of all time and why? Let me know in the comments section below. But in the meantime, that is where I am going to leave it, letting you all go with peace, blessings, and so much love. Please, especially during this holiday season, do be kind and love one another and spread your sparkling energy all throughout the world. And until next time, happy reading. Bye, everyone.